I'll be recording this session, Victor.
Okay.
Yeah. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. On the behalf of TRIZ Asia and TRIZ Association of Asia, welcome Mr. Victor Fay for TRIZtaks. This is our chapter 13, and we have actually started this chapter to make people aware about what is going on in TRIZ. And the participants are not only those who are having the exposure to TRIZ and who are expert in the TRIZ. Of course, these people are also with us. But then the basic purpose of this TRIZ talks is to motivate the people and make them aware what are the benefits by learning TRIZ. TRIZ is a very versatile tool and very beneficial, but unfortunately, it has got a little less awareness among people. And to overcome that, we have started with this. Okay, so a brief introduction to today's speaker, Mr. Victor Fay. He has over 35 years of experience in TRIZ research, training, and application. Victor has collected more than 2 decades of consulting experience serving the global 1,000 organizations. His work has ranged the gamut from teaching, coaching, and consulting to facilitating and leading cross-functional teams in delivering critical breakthrough product and technology solutions. Only at Hyundai Kia Motors, his consulting effort resulted in obtaining over 100 patents with an estimated ROI of $100 million. From 1997 through 2014, he was an adjunct professor at Wayne State University, where he taught a graduate level course in TRIZ. He has lectured on the subject at MIT, Stevens Institute of Technology,
She's
Chalmers
my
University.
baby.
Okay. Um, Technion, National Singh Hua University, Lewis Business School, and others. His books include Effective Innovation, The Development of Winning Technologies, published by ASME Press, Introduction to TRIZ, printed by Nikim Kogyo Shimbum in Japanese, and in Innovation on Demand, New Product Development Using TRIZ, released by Cambridge University Press, and which is also translated in Korean. So, we have a very versatile and very experienced personality with us. Now, without much of ado, I would request Victor to start with today's session.
Thank you very much, Sandeep, for this nice introduction. Good time of the day, everyone, wherever you are, whichever continent you are. It's my understanding that I have to tell you a little bit about myself and my journey through TRIZ. This journey started many years ago when I had no gray hair and was much thinner. I just entered university, and it was when I learned about TRIZ. I learned about TRIZ under very interesting, at least to me, circumstances. A friend of mine from high school, he one day started teasing me with some problems which looked on the surface very simple, but solution to those problems were difficult to arrive at. And he would give me a problem, give me a few minutes to think about it, and then would tell me about a very elegant solution to that problem. And I got fascinated, asked him where did he get all those problems. And he told me that he had read a book called The Algorithm of Invention. I have to back up a little bit. I lived back then in the city of Baku, which is a capital of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan used to be a part of the former Soviet Union. It was one of the republics. Now it's an independent country, which is located north of Iran and west of the Caspian Sea. So back then it was still the Soviet Union. And going back to my story, he told me about the book which he had read and gave me the book. I started reading it, and it was probably one of the most interesting books which I had read in my life back then. The book was written by somebody whose name didn't tell me anything. The name was Genrich Altschuler. And it talked about a methodology which allowed you to be much smarter. Much smarter, not in all walks of life, but specifically in creating new and powerful ideas, primarily in engineering, in technology. And when I started my training at university, I was to be trained as an electronics engineer, electrical engineer. That friend of mine also told me that the author of that book, Genrich Altschuler, was actually living in the same city of Baku, in which both of us lived. And he suggested to go to him and to his place and find out if we could learn TRIZ from him, from himself, from the author of that methodology, of that amazing thing. So the two of us and another friend, we found out where he lived, and we didn't find his phone number. Actually, back then he didn't have a phone, but it's a separate story about the life in the former Soviet Union. So we just appeared in front of his door of his apartment unannounced, rang the bell, and he opened the door. He was relatively young back then. He was, how old was he? He was 53, and not 53, 47 actually. So I saw a tall, lean, very handsome man with blue eyes. He asked us what we what we wanted, and we told him that we read your book and we would like to learn TRIZ. And he said that he didn't teach TRIZ back then. He was a private citizen, didn't occupy any position in any organization. He was just a private person, a writer. And he directed us to one of his students who was teaching TRIZ. So we went to see that guy, and back then there was an organization called a Public Institute of Engineering Creativity. I'm translating from the Russian. And for 1 year, the three of us, we studied under that guy who was a very interesting fellow, a mathematician, not an engineer, who taught us some basics of TRIZ. 1 year later, that particular person, he tragically died. He drowned in a river. So we went back to Altschuler and told him about that, and he suggested that we meet somebody, another of his students who also taught TRIZ. We met with that guy, and for a couple of years we met with him. He taught us privately, after which he immigrated to Israel. And again, now it was me alone. I went to Altshuler and told him, look, I would like to continue studying, and I guess there's no one else left but you. And I became a, if you will, a private student of Altshuler himself. And for the remaining 12 or 13 years, I first studied under Altshuler, then I collaborated with him, doing various, participating in various research efforts, participating in workshops and seminars which he hosted. And in the end of the 1990, my family immigrated to the United States. The Soviet Union was back then in the process of collapsing. It completely dissolved, some of you may remember, in 1991. It decomposed itself into 15 independent countries. Anyway, our family, my wife and my daughter, we arrived in the city of Baltimore. We didn't know a soul in the United States. My wife had some very distant relatives who told us some basic things about the life in America, but didn't have any job. Our English was not as good. So my first job was I delivered pizza. It's a typical American story. I learned how to drive because I didn't drive back in the USSR. I learned how to drive. I started delivering pizza. Then I graduated to repairing computers. And I did my best to try to find a work in TRIZ. Because back then, when I worked under Altshuler, when I cooperated with him, I realized that TRIZ would be my main thing in my life. Altshuler himself was an amazing person, the most interesting person I have ever met. I have been blessed with knowing many interesting people in my life, again, from different walks of life. Engineers, scientists, writers, artists, with many of whom I became friends. But Altshuler is in his class of his own. First of all, he was a genius who, at the age of 20, formulated a goal to develop a discipline, a science, whatever you call it, which would help average people think creatively as possible. And instead of thinking about what differentiates a creative person from the rest of us, he formulated a totally different approach. His approach was, we don't know what's going on in our mind. Even if we put together two in our mind, we are asked to calculate the number of apples or any other objects on the table. We don't know how we do that. We know the result, we know the algorithm, but what's happening in our mind, we don't know. Let alone we don't know what is happening when we think about a problem which requires a creative, novel solution. We think about the problem, it can take us a few minutes, it can take us a few hours, sometimes it takes years, and all of a sudden we are struck with a great idea. So instead of just going down this path, trying to figure out what specific mental mechanisms allow us to develop creative ideas, Altshuler, at the age of 20, hypothesized that despite the obvious fact that ideas are born in our minds, the objects of our creative efforts, in this case, in the case of engineering, technological systems, that is, products, technologies, processes, they evolve, which is not a good news, great news. We know that things evolve. They become different over time. But what was totally unexpected, it was his idea, just an idea, that the evolution of things, of products, technologies, processes, it follows certain rules, certain vectors, if you will, which today we call trends of engineered system evolution. And Altshuler hypothesized that if such trends exist and they are universal, which means they are applicable to all products, all technologies, all processes, we can use these trends, if we discover them, to make next step in the evolution of any given technology, product, or process. He called them engineered systems. So this would allow us to replace uncontrolled creativity, at least in engineering, with a systematic process of developing new ideas, because any new innovation, any new invention is a next step in the evolution of a given product, process, or technology, or system. And this very approach is a testimony of the ingenuity, amazing ingenuity of that man. He didn't just propose this idea, he followed it through. And for many years, for many decades, virtually alone, he created the foundation of what today is called TRIZ, the methodology which today is used by many leading companies, and not only companies, but by many innovators as a key practice behind their innovation efforts. So going back to my story, while I was repairing computers and delivering pizza, trying to support my family, I wrote letters to anybody to some people whose names I had learned back in the Soviet Union, trying to find out if they would be interested in talking with me and if they could offer some opportunity for me to get involved in TRIZ full time. And one such person was Professor Dr. Eugene Rivin. Back then I lived in Baltimore, and Professor Rivin lived in Detroit. He again learned about my existence through his colleague, to whom I wrote a letter. He called me up and said, "I am such and such. I heard about TRIZ. I find it fascinating, although it sounds too good to be true. I myself authored many patents. Back then it was, the number was in 40s. And many of them have been implemented worldwide, many of my inventions, and I never heard about any systematic approach to creating new ideas. So this thing sounds too good to be true, but I would like to learn more about it. And I told him that I don't know how I can convince you. Again, it was 1991 over the phone that TRIZ works. Just maybe you are working on some problem and maybe you can share it with me, and I would try to solve it, or at least to propose some ideas. And if you, I will share them with you, and if you find them interesting, we can continue the conversation. He agreed. We met a couple of months later in Washington. For a couple of hours, he gave me a problem. A week later, I typed a solution on a typewriter, several solutions, sent not only the solutions, but the approach behind those solutions, TRIZ approach behind those solutions, sent them to him. And he said that it's amazing. You are not the problem was from mechanical engineering, from the machine tool industry. And he said that it's amazing you are an electronics engineer, and the ideas which you proposed are very interesting because I didn't tell you in advance, but actually this problem has been solved by several leading universities in the world and several machine tool manufacturers, again, in Germany, in Japan, and the United States. And the ideas which you suggested are very interesting. They're both creative and rather practical. So he invited me to start a TRIZ course at Wayne State University, Detroit, where he back then, at which he was a professor of mechanical engineering. So I moved to Detroit, and I will try to accelerate. He managed to turn one of his courses, which he back then taught. He stopped teaching that course, but the spot for that course he gave to me, and I started teaching the first university level course in the West on TRIZ. For the first year, I invited a good friend of mine and colleague, Igor Vertkin, who also was who back then lived in England, but before that he lived in Baku, and actually was one of the best students of Altshuler, and I would say his favorite student. And the first semester we taught together. Then Igor left for England, and I continued teaching TRIZ on my own, became an adjunct professor at university, and taught at Wayne State for for over 20 years. A couple of years later, Professor Rivin suggested that we form a consultancy, which we called not very originally, we called ourselves not very originally the TRIZ Group, and we started offering our services in consulting and in training to various companies. First of all, in the Detroit area, and later on, as we gained some, as our name has become known outside the Detroit area to other companies. And unfortunately, Professor Rivin passed away in 2011. But while working with him and then working without him and with other partners of mine, We managed to work with top companies in the world. The list is too long to mention, but major automotive companies, consumer product companies, in various industrial companies, some software companies, and we wrote a few books, and that's essentially the kernel of my story. What was interesting is one of many things which were interesting is the reaction of people in companies when they first heard about TRIZ. Today, if you Google up TRIZ, you will be inundated with various pieces of information about TRIZ. There are many books on TRIZ written in many languages, in English, in Spanish, in Chinese, in Korean, in many French, many other languages. Back then, nobody heard about TRIZ. Actually, the two words, Russian and innovation, they were considered not belonging to the same, in the same sentence, in the same phrase. Because people would ask, okay, you are talking about this revolutionary approach to innovation, but name me one major innovation which came from Russia. We're not talking about the automatic rifle AK-47 or your military your military jets or your nuclear missiles, but something which and the ordinary average person can recognize. And it was very difficult to explain to these people that the Soviet economy wasn't oriented at the consumer. It was mostly oriented at defense. So it was one of the huge barriers which we had to overcome, one of many barriers. But another barrier, people know that there are two types of persons, people who can, very small number of people who can develop ideas on a more or less regular basis, and the rest of us, the majority of us who are not, we can be smart, but we're not necessarily creative. And what was interesting, when you see how during your training, and trainings in corporations are very short, usually 3 days, maximum 5 days, how people's minds change. They change from a total skepticism and just some internal resistance to a complete acceptance of what TRIZ can do for you, how it can change your thinking, how it can change your ability to think not only in engineering, not only in product development or process improvement, but it gives you a lens through which you look at various other things around you. And essentially TRIZ, I call it TRIZ causes a permanent brain damage to you. Damage in a good sense, because you, if you learn TRIZ in earnest, it changes the way you think. It changes your approach to many aspects of life, not only to solving specific engineering challenges. I've had many interesting stories about specific projects. on which I worked for trying to help various customers of our company. Many stories of the problems which my students solved. It would be very difficult to select any one of them and tell you this story, but because each problem is unique, and it has its own flavor, it has its own history, it has its own drama, and I am afraid that if I spend too much time on telling you about the stories, it would be unproductive in today. So I would like to discuss with you, if you're interested. I would like rather to answer your questions than tell you about specific stories from my consulting or teaching experience.
Thank you, Victor. And your journey of life was really mesmerizing. Even I know you since many years, but this is first time I have come to know, like from where you have come and from what you have reached today. So yeah, of course, this is a forum wherein we want speak participants to ask their questions. And definitely the way, Victor, you have narrated your story, we feel like keep on listening to it. We never realize how half an hour has gone. So, dear participants, please populate your questions. You can directly unmute yourself or you can put it in chat box. There are a couple of questions which I got in advance, Victor. I would like to ask you till the time our participants would ask their questions. So one participant has asked, like everyone speaks about innovation nowadays. So how can TRIZ be integrated into companies' innovation strategy?
It's thank you for the question, Sandeep. Uh, well, it's a complicated question because integrating innovation into a corporate strategy, it's a multifaceted process. First of all, the company has to be interested in innovation. Because many companies, and when I say companies, what I really mean, I mean the leaders of the company, because there is no such thing as a company, at least when we are talking about specific innovation challenges. There are leaders in the company who are personally interested in promoting, making their company innovative, and there are not very many of these people. And there are company leaders who give lip service to the word innovation. Yeah, innovation is very popular, but not every leader is willing or ready to really commit themselves to making their company innovative. Innovation implies not only the commitment of the management, but it also requires the ability of the people who are involved in the innovative efforts to produce innovations and produce these innovations not randomly, occasionally, but to do it on a regular basis. So innovation becomes not just a random event, but becomes something which you are doing on more or less a regular basis. And there are processes which every company uses to improve the quality of their products or increase the productivity of the engineering processes. Some of these well-known practices are Six Sigma, for example, or Lean Six Sigma. There are many others. And TRIZ is very compatible with those processes, because all those processes, most of them at least, they involve two things, two stages, which are absolutely critical for any innovation activity. These stages are problem identification or problem formulation and concept generation or concept development. And these are two areas in which TRIZ has no rival, frankly, among other approaches, tools, methodologies for enhancing innovative innovation processes. TRIZ allows us to identify in a systematic way, and let me underscore, systematic way, without relying on brainstorming or without relying on subjective assumptions, without relying on some personal qualities of the innovator, whoever they are, allows us to identify what we call key problems, which need to be solved in order to meet the project objectives. Almost invariably, when you talk with a new customer, a new client, or even if you work for a company as an in-house TRIZ expert, you face a situation when you have to solve a problem which has been around for quite a while. And very smart people, very capable engineers, applied scientists, researchers, not only in your company, but in some other companies in your industry, have tried to solve this problem, and they have not succeeded. And in the prevailing majority of cases, if a particular problem becomes tough, becomes hard to solve, which means that it has been attempted many times, but the solution is nowhere in sight, it most likely means that the problem has not been properly formulated, or a problem has not been identified properly. And TRIZ has specific tools, tools for systematic of discovery and formulation of the problems which are worth solving. So it's one aspect of TRIZ which makes it compatible with any product or process improvement process which your company or any other company can employ on a regular basis, whether it's Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, or anything else. The other power of TRIZ resides in its ability to help us develop very powerful solutions to the formulated problem. A conventional concept or idea generation process implies developing many ideas, brainstorming. But when you participate in brainstorming sessions, the productivity of this session is usually assessed by the number of concepts which your team has generated. So if during a brainstorming session you generated 50 or 100 problems, this is considered a great success. Well, it's a fun process to participate in a brainstorming session. And brainstorming is very easy to learn. You get exposed to its rules in a few minutes, and then you try it. And an hour later, you become a brainstorming professional. You don't have to take a graduate level course on TRIZ in university, or have to go through a multi-stage TRIZ training effort. The problem with this is that, let's say you generated 55 ideas, but you don't need 55 ideas. You cannot, even if all of them are great, you're not going to implement 55 ideas. No company, the richest company in the world, which has tremendous resources, financial, manpower, and others, cannot test 55 ideas. provided all of them are great. But usually you don't have 55 great ideas, so 100 ideas. You need 1 or 2 ideas maximum, which you can really test and find out how they work. And this is what TRIZ is known for. Instead of unsystematically, randomly generate a huge number of ideas, most of which are going into the garbage bin after the concept selection process or idea selection process. TRIZ allows you to systematically attack the problem which you have formulated previously and arrive at one, ideally, or maybe couple of very powerful ideas, which you then test. And if you have 2 or 3 ideas, you combine them together and you come up with the final great concept. And again, in any product or process improvement methodology, which is used today by many corporations, which I mentioned, idea generation is part of that methodology of that process. And this is where TRIZ fits in perfectly.
Thank you for the detail and very apt answer of the question. I request those who are not asking questions should keep themselves on a mute mode. It disturbs others. There is one more question, Victor, from Mr. Nilesh, and he asked, like, please recommend best way to self-learn TRIZ.
Best way to learn TRIZ?
By own self.
There are many ways to learn TRIZ. First of all, there are many books out there which you can learn, but unfortunately, reading a book on TRIZ will not likely make you a TRIZ, very proficient in TRIZ. It's like taking a book a textbook on mathematics or physics and trying to learn it yourself. You can do it, and you might be even successful in solving some problems in the book, some exercises in the book. But you will need a teacher, a good mentor to help you with applying this to your real life problems, or whatever you learn to real life problems. And today there are quite a few possibilities for that. There are courses available in TRIZ out there. You can Google them up. Various TRIZ consultants and various TRIZ trainers offer training in TRIZ. But try to make sure that TRIZ is that whoever you're trying to select as your instructor, your trainer, has experience not only in TRIZ training but in TRIZ application, because TRIZ is a very applied science. It's a very applied discipline. It's not theoretical. If a person has no personal experience, if your instructor doesn't have personal experience in applying TRIZ to many problems in his or her career, most likely they're not going to teach you anything really valuable. It's first thing. So this second thing is, if you want to find out the most capable trainers available out there, go to the organization called TRIZ Official, MATRIZ Official. You can look them up on the web. It's an international TRIZ association which certifies people in TRIZ. There are 5 levels of certification. I'm not going to talk about that now. But this organization has a list of trainers, respectable, reputable trainers across all continents in Europe, in Asia, in the United States. On many continents and countries, in many countries, and you can go through that list, find out some company or some individual who is teaching, who is local, maybe lives in your country, who is somehow who provides training in your language, and contact this person or this organization and try to find out what they offer. Talking about India, I would highly recommend Sandeep and his colleagues from the organization called TRIZ Asia. In my view, they are the best trainers and TRIZ available. They have many years of experience, both in training and in consulting to various companies across many industries. So they training not only good in terms of the way they deliver their materials, but it's supported by many years of their personal involvement in providing solutions to hard to solve problems to many companies.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. This question has been asked several times, but the way you gave it answer is really commendable. There is one more question by Mr. Hemant Pardikal. Even today, mention of TRIZ is greeted with skepticism. What are the ways you found are good to overcome this initial barrier?
Well, skepticism is a very natural thing. Actually, it's a very good protective mechanism which we have, which allows us not to get involved in risky enterprises in life. Skepticism is good. Excessive skepticism is not very healthy. I don't have any universal recipe for combating excessive skepticism. If a person is not open-minded, I find, again, it's my personal approach, I don't spend too much time trying to convince him that their skepticism barrier has to be lowered, at least for a short while. Skepticism is okay. The only way to combat and overcome skepticism is through demonstrating to this person the power of TRIZ. It's what I did with Professor Riven, who became my friend and partner. I told you this story when he said, I'm a very successful innovator. I never used any systematic approach. I don't know, I'm not aware of anyone who arrived, any successful innovator who had ever arrived at their ideas through a systematic process. And I managed to convince him. I asked him to give me a tough problem, and I generated some ideas which he found fascinating. It's the best way. You ask for a challenge. The person gives you that challenge, and you try to solve it. You do your best, and if the solution impresses that skeptical person, then you can start your further discussion. And of course, you can also direct or refer this person to Google. And today there are so many case studies available on the web, which any person who is really interested to find out what TRIZ is and what it can do to both the individual and to the business can easily find these numerous stories on Google, documented stories, stories of success, not only from TRIZ consultants who are interested in selling their services, but from people inside corporations who um, reported or report on their successes in applying TRIZ. Now there's thousands upon thousands of these case studies reflected in various papers, in blog posts, in LinkedIn posts. Uh, each year, there are several conferences, international conferences held in the world. TRIZ Asia holds an annual international conference, usually in mid autumn, mid fall, usually in November, where people present from different companies present their stories, case studies on how they were able to use TRIZ to solve some long-standing problems in their company or in their industry. There is the European TRIZ Association, which conducts annual international conferences. There is this International TRIZ Association that conducts international conferences. There's lower caliber events, both international and local, at which people share their success stories. So the information, there's plenty of information out there. So if a skeptical person is really interested in finding out what TRIZ is and how it can help them and their business, they just have to Google it up.
Thank you, Victor. There are many questions which were already asked and they are with me, but there are three more questions and we'll have to be quick and brief on them. So one question is by Rajni Kumar. It is, do TRIZ required in-depth knowledge of working area? And what advice you want to give to experienced professional who want to excel in TRIZ methodology, particularly in design area?
Oh, absolutely. But you cannot. TRIZ is not a is not sufficient to solve any given problem. To successfully solve a problem, you need to possess a combination of two things: your expertise in the subject matter. If you're whoever you are, you have to be proficient in your profession. You have to be possess all the knowledge necessary to solve the problem. And TRIZ gives you specific tools which allow you to process this knowledge which you have, or your company has, or your industry has, and turn this knowledge into a new solution, or into a new knowledge, if you will. But the subject matter expertise is absolutely important. It's the starting point, because TRIZ for engineering is what mathematics is for physics. If you know mathematics only, but you no idea about any physical laws or any physical mechanisms, your mathematics will be absolutely inapplicable. You can be a genius in mathematics, but mathematics alone will not help you to solve any problems in physics. And if you know only physical laws and you know everything about the physical mechanisms of a particular physical phenomenon, but you don't know how to apply various mathematical techniques, you are not going to become a successful physicist. Same here. What TRIZ also does, and this happens time and again in modern technology and modern product development. TRIZ allow many solutions which today which originate in one industry, they can be very effectively and efficiently solved by the knowledge from some other industry. And this is what TRIZ allows us to do. It allows us to generate concepts which are outside of our expertise, in which case we need to invite other people who possess that expertise in order to assess our concept, perform its feasibility analysis, and tell us what is going to work, what maybe, but perhaps we have some potential secondary problems which need to be solved in order for our concept to become really successful. But again, going back to your original question, yes, in order to become a successful TRIZ practitioner, knowing TRIZ alone is not enough. You have also to possess the subject matter expertise.
Perfect answer and very relevant analogy of maths and physics. I'm really a wonderful example. Uh, we have very less time and two more questions, Victor, so you may have to hurry it up. Can you talk about current advancements and trends in the TRIZ? This is a question from Naveen.
Thank you for your question. It's a very interesting question because TRIZ originally was developed by Altshuler and then later by Altshuler at his school as a methodology discipline for concept development. Today, TRIZ, as TRIZ started spreading in the world, it became obvious that in order to be successful, TRIZ has to also address business challenges. Because sometimes the company says, I would like to radically reduce the cost of my product. It's not a problem, it's a goal. And we would like to come up with a new product which would be a product winner and which would beat our competition. It's not a problem, it's a goal. Over the past, I would say 15 or so years, we in the TRIZ community have developed various tools to connect the business objectives of a particular company with the concept development, which TRIZ has always been very effective in. And today, many developments in TRIZ, they are focused on addressing not only technological challenges, engineering challenges, but also business challenges, such as improving the company's position in the market, coming up with ideas of new products or services, and addressing some business challenges. And actually, there is now a branch within TRIZ, which is called Business TRIZ, which specifically addresses these challenges.
Thank you, Victor. Of course, a quick question would be there like there is a question from Mr. Sudarsh Lal, and he is a CEO of a couple of engineering institutes in India. And he is looking like at introducing innovation and creativity as an institutionalized process or curriculum for undergraduate engineering students. He's asking, can TRIZ help in any way for this?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The problem.
They just want to introduce innovation and creativity in the institute for undergraduate students, and they're just looking like how TRIZ can help them out in developing the curriculum as well.
Well,
So
there are
big
several.
topic. We'll be having a separate discussion with them, but definitely would like to have answer from your wisdom.
Okay, I'll try to be as quick as possible. There are several universities out there for example, in Europe, in France, and other countries which teach TRIZ on a regular basis. Maybe later you can give. I can answer this. I can connect you with various professors around the world who can share with you their experience of introducing TRIZ into the curriculum, both undergraduate and graduate, in their specific universities, and you can talk to them and they might be helpful in assisting you with that challenge.
Thank you, Victor. And we have finished our all questions by 5 o'clock. Oops, there is one more question. Okay, we'll just quickly take it over. Uh, it is from host. Do you also facilitate workshops with untrained people? If yes, how do you judge the idea quality when facilitating TRIZ workshop with untrained teams?
In what? In trees?
Yeah,
Yeah, of
even
course.
I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah. Most of our trainees, most of our students are just people who had no previous trees training. Yeah, absolutely. We train people who are who never had any exposure to trees before, um, whether they are professional engineers or managers, um, or even professors at MIT. I conducted several workshops for or trainings for professors at MIT and PhD students at MIT who had never been exposed to trees before. Um, Absolutely, yes. But we also train people who had some previous training and in trees, and they want to increase their um, proficiency in trees. Yeah, and when I say we, I mean the trees community, not only my company, Gen Trees, uh, but also the trees community in general. We deal with all kinds of people from different walks of life. Absolutely.
Thank you, Victor. It was a wonderful session, and we'll be definitely keeping like it will just linger in our mind whatever the things you have said. It was one of the best presentation which was done during TRIZttalks since last 13 chapters. And thank you very much on behalf of TRIZ Asia and AISSMS College of Engineering. And last but not the least, I would like to tell that to the participants that stay tuned on 28th of April. Again, we'll be coming with chapter 14, and very soon we'll be letting you know who would be our next speaker. So on behalf of everyone, I would like to thank you, Victor, again, and thanks for all your time. Early morning, you have got up and given us this session. Thank you very
I
much.
have my coffee. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Thanks so much, Sandeep, and thank you, PB Narayan, for hosting this session, for organizing it. Thank you, everyone, for attending. If you have any questions, I would be happy to reply. Sandeep has my email address, so feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll try to do my best to reply quickly. Take
Sure.
care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Victor. Looking forward for more sessions from you. We'll try to find more platforms also on that. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. And dear participants, have a great day or good night because the participants are there from all across the world. Thanks for being with us and have a great day ahead. So with this, I would like to end this session.